solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
It's not bad news, it's the truth, and it being exposed allows us to actually solve problems. But it is not a bad thing to do to expose. Put the ladle into the big bowl of bunny stew that we are receiving on a daily basis and question it. Because how else will you get accountability? Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk. Great report by Chris Woodward, by the way. American Family News, onenewsnow.com. The entire newscast is great, but a specific report referencing history of what was said and done, that's what journalists are supposed to do. They're supposed to give you background and context. Well, when it comes to journalism and the mainstream media, they have been AWOL when it comes to the story of Benghazi. Somebody who certainly has been on the issue is the co-director of Benghazi 9/11. That would be Benghazi 9-11.com. Buzz Jacobs. Buzz, welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Crane. Good to talk to you. I'm great. How about yourself this evening?
I'm doing well. Let's jump right in here. And here is the president last night, and he's continuing an answer about the terror threat and closing the decision to close the embassies, 22 and then 19 across the Middle East region, Muslim world. Here is the president. Roll it.
It's also a reminder of how courageous our embassy personnel tend to be, because you can never have 100% security in some of these places.
Sure.
The countries themselves sometimes are ill-equipped to provide the kind of security that you want. Even if we reinforce it, there's still vulnerabilities. And these diplomats, they go out there and they serve every day. Oftentimes they have their families with them. They do an incredible job and sometimes don't get enough credit. So we're grateful to them, and we got to do everything we can to protect them.
Buzz, if you were around a table and a conversation is taking place, and the president says that during the conversation, what would you say?
Well, of course, what he just said is pretty benign. I mean, I of course agree with him that our diplomatic security professionals, our diplomats around the world, many of whom I know, do risk their lives, and they make great sacrifices. Only second probably to those in the military and some operatives. But the president's got to put this in. You got to put this into context that the president has conducted a lead from behind foreign policy, where he's done everything from bow to the Saudi king to welcoming the Muslim Brotherhood to the White House to drawing imaginary red lines in Syria and then not acting on them. So we have this that becomes problematic, because instead of standing from a position of strength, which the United States should do at all times, the president is doing it from a position of weakness, and that creates, in my opinion, threats for our diplomatic personnel that they wouldn't otherwise have.
And we played the clip, but I want to play this again. Cut number 8. And here's what prefaced that statement, because it goes to context, but it also speaks to something that, cut number 8. Tell me when it's ready. Roll it.
It's significant enough that we're taking every precaution. We had already done a lot to bolster embassy security around the world, but especially in the Middle East, North Africa, where the threats tend to be highest. And whenever we see a threat stream that we think is specific enough that we can take some specific precautions within a certain time frame, then we do so. Now, it's a reminder that for all the progress we've made, getting bin Laden, putting al-Qaeda between Afghanistan and Pakistan back on its heels, that this radical, violent extremism is still out there, and we've got to stay on top of it.
What happens when We review Benghazi and we see requests for more security and attacks leading up to that. That's the context I want to give you. Buzz, go ahead.
And it's a great context to put it in, Crane, because, of course, we know that the ambassador himself, who's now deceased because he was murdered by the terrorists, he identified these threats in Benghazi specifically and said, sent a cable, sent messages back to Washington, asked for more security, said they cannot sustain a direct assault, and the answers, it went unresponded to. And that is obviously a big failure of the administration, and they know it's a failure, and I believe that the president himself knows it's a failure. So this time, of course, the pendulum's going to swing all the way to the other side. Instead of failure, they're going to take absolute precautions. So they can say there's no risk now. We're going to take zero risk. We're going to close down our embassy. If we need to close them down for 2 weeks, for a month, it doesn't matter. I can just almost see the president sitting around the White House Situation Room table going, "Look, y'all put me into a bind on Benghazi." Of course, he wouldn't take any responsibility for it himself, I would presume. Y'all put me in the bind, and now I want to make sure that we don't have this happen again. So do whatever it takes. And of course, what's happened in government typically, whenever they want to mitigate the risk for themselves, they take it to the extreme. So I don't, and I say this, Crane, with one caveat. And that is, of course, I don't know what the intelligence is. I haven't read it or seen it.
Right.
And maybe there is such a specific threat that these actions were warranted. But it seems like there's an awful lot of people that are questioning whether it was necessary to do what has been done.
When you talk about accountability and taking responsibility, also in the war and sending the message to protect other diplomatic posts, a part of that is holding people to account, and specifically countries to account that are either going to be cooperating or not cooperating. In the case of Benghazi, Libya, we have now one arrest in this. And my question is, if the president is interested in defending Americans, shouldn't there be a price for murdering 4?
Well, absolutely, there needs to be. And I think, I believe that because, nearly a year has passed, and there really has been no accountability, there's been no justice for Benghazi, it sends a message. It sends a message that's loud and clear. And also, let me add, we're not pursuing this Benghazi attack like an act of war, like President Bush did through the global war on terrorism, which the President Obama refuses to call, but we're pursuing it as a criminal investigation. So it's almost like we're resetting back to a pre-9/11 2001 mentality. And we all know that was very disastrous for this country. Brought down the World Trade Center towers, led to a direct attack on the Pentagon. We do not need to go back there. And I hope, I pray that the president is fully appreciating the hate and disdain that these extremists have for us, and that his actions on the campaign trail last cycle, where he was saying, Al Qaeda's defeated, they're on the run. We're all much safer. Well, it turns out that's not necessarily true.
Final question for you, Buzz. Why isn't Speaker Boehner putting together a select committee? Why isn't he allowing that to take place? Obviously, Representative Wolf has done some great work in support for that and the reasons why. But he says now we have 4 committees. They're not connected. The committees, really, if you want accountability, why not a select committee? What's going on with Speaker John Boehner?
It's a great question, and it's very, in my opinion, we absolutely need to have a select committee because we need, and I think we've talked about this many times, Crane, we need a select committee with full subpoena power that has authority to investigate across the entire federal government. Senator Marco Rubio told me that there were some shenanigans being played earlier on, and we can't allow that to go. Speaker Boehner has got to show leadership in this regard and support Frank Wolf's bill to have a select committee.
And we can show.
I don't know the answer. The bottom line is I don't know the answer.
I gotcha.
Whatever it is, it can't be good.
we can learn more about this at Benghazi9-11.com, and you can voice your support through that. Buzz, thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you. You too, Greg. Thank you.
AFR Talk.